Joyboy is one of the most mysterious characters in One Piece. He's connected to all the major mysteries in the series. The One Piece itself, Laugh Tale, Void Centuries, Ancient Weapons, Poneglyphs, Land of Wano, all that stuff. There's a lot you can speculate about this person. Was he a giant who wore a straw hat? Was he the king of the Ancient Kingdom? Maybe the leader of the D-Clan? You've probably heard a bunch of these theories before, but today I want to take a step back and just talk about the things that we know for certain about the Joyboy character. And to make it clear, I don't want to talk about the Joyboy character of the past or stuff like, is this reincarnation or is Joyboy a title? I just want to talk about who I believe is the current day Joyboy. As you can tell from the title, I think it's Vivi. But before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. And after you finish watching, tell me what you think about Joyboy in the comments below. And yes, I'm going to be saying Joyboy a lot in this video. Okay, let's start off with what we know. 900 years ago, a person named Joyboy made a promise with the people of Fishman Island that he could not keep. The promise had something to do with moving the Noah. The second thing we know is that Joyboy is the person who left behind the One Piece. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's literally all we know about the individual character. Now let's get into the whole prophecy stuff and everything that has to do with the current day Joyboy, the current day events. Oden says that the borders of Wano must be opened before the day Joyboy arrives, and that Wano has to be prepared to welcome and work with this person. He's also basically saying that the world needs this person, whoever he is. Oden's lines are by far the most important thing to consider when trying to figure out who Joyboy is. Right now, everything in the story points towards Luffy being Joyboy. He has the will of D, he's going to be the one who finds the One Piece, he's going to surpass Roger, he'll destroy Fishman Island, and that kind of ties into the whole Joyboy promise with the Mermaid Princess. Luffy is the main character of the story who will completely change the world. He's going to be the one that gets rid of those currently in power, aka Emu and the Celestial Dragons. Everything points towards Luffy being Joyboy. For the most part. There's probably some other stuff as well that I'm forgetting, but it all kind of doesn't matter because Luffy is already in Wano and he's going to be the one who defeats Kaido, which will lead to the borders being open. Remember, Oden said that the borders of Wano must be open before the day Joyboy arrives. If Luffy is Joyboy, he's already in Wano. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense for him to open the borders to welcome himself. So there are two things Oda could do with this. Luffy is Joyboy, but he arrived too early, and you could say that Oden, the Scabbards, the people of Wano, they failed in their role, which was to open the borders before he arrived. I find this a little hard to believe, and it kind of just makes things convoluted. It could work, but I don't get the sense that Oda is trying to do that. The second thing is that another person is Joyboy, which is obviously what I'm going for here. Okay, so who is Joyboy? We have to narrow it down to a couple of characters. First, pay attention to this scene. The Sea Kings are talking about how their sovereign will soon be born. This is obviously them talking about Shirahoshi. They then go on to mention how another sovereign will also be born in another sea. We all assume the other sovereign is Joyboy. Well, we don't really have any other options to be honest. Like, who else could it be? But just a quick rundown as to why. We know the Sea Kings have been waiting for a long time for these two to meet, and they hope that this time things will go well. To me, this sounds exactly like they're talking about the Mermaid Princess and Joyboy. Otohime and Neptune both mentioned that someone will arrive one day to fulfill the promise and will meet with Shirahoshi. The Sea Kings are hoping things go well this time because obviously 800 to 900 years ago it didn't go well since the promise was broken between Joyboy and the Mermaid Princess. So everything is pointing towards this other sovereign being Joyboy. The big takeaway from this scene is that Joyboy at this point in the Oden flashback had not been born. This means that it cannot be Momonosuke since he was alive at this time. And other than Luffy, Momonosuke is the most likely candidate to be Joyboy. Also, you'd think that Oden and Roger should know that Momonosuke is Joyboy, but they didn't. So yeah, I don't think it's Momonosuke. This also means that characters like Dragon Shanks, I don't know, Buggy, Blackbeard, whoever, they cannot be Joyboy because they were around at this time. So if you're still not convinced about me eliminating Luffy and Momonosuke as like potential candidates for the Joyboy character, just remember, the borders have to be open before Joyboy arrives. Momonosuke is already here, same thing with Luffy. And the thing about Luffy is he's already met Shirahoshi, but the Sea Kings didn't really care too much. They didn't really have a reaction. Remember, they were supposed to be excited that these two are finally going to meet each other. And if they knew that Shirahoshi was the sovereign right upon birth, and that they knew she was going to have the powers of Poseidon, you would think they would know the same thing about Luffy and Joyboy. I wanted to spend a good portion of this video talking about Luffy and Momonosuke, since right now it seems like everyone in the community thinks Joyboy is one of those two. Now, a lot of dialogue regarding Joyboy is pretty ambiguous and often left up to interpretation, so it still could be them. I just doubt it at this point. Alright, so who's left that could still be Joyboy? Considering their age, you got characters like Vivi, Sabo, Kobe, Rebecca, I don't know, probably some other characters as well. I don't know about you guys, but Vivi is the only character left in the story that makes sense to me. If you want to take it literally, then she was already born a sovereign, a princess just like Shirahoshi. Her lineage is also directly tied to the world government and the Void Century, and she has already formed a relationship with Shirahoshi, which should eventually develop into the relationship that Joyboy and the Mermaid Princess had a long time ago. You even have Imu, who decided that she needed to be eliminated as soon as possible. I can understand him not going after Luffy or Blackbeard first, since it would take a lot more effort to take out one of them, and he probably hopes that they'll just take each other out. But then you have Shirahoshi right there in Marijo or Marijoa, however you pronounce it. Even if he doesn't know that she is currently Poseidon, because remember, the power only awakens once every couple hundred years, as long as there's like a 10% chance that Shirahoshi currently has this power, she is more important to him than Vivi. She should be more important to him than Vivi. So does Imu really hate the Nefertari family and Cobra that much that he would choose them to be eliminated over Shirahoshi, someone who possibly has the powers of Poseidon? I'd like to believe that there's another reason for Imu choosing Vivi, such as her possibly being Joyboy. Now, what does Vivi being Joyboy mean for the story? Her character has always been involved in these political matters. I feel like it's just a natural progression for her to go from ruling and protecting her country to eventually the world. I know it seems kind of crazy, but something has happened in regards to Alabasta and she's currently being targeted, so her character has already become involved in all of this. I think most of us also believe that at some point she'll return to the Straw Hats and sail with them. If she is Joyboy, that means she'll probably arrive at the end of the arc, at the end of Wano, when the borders are open. This would be like the perfect time to rejoin the Straw Hats on their final part of the journey. And she probably can't go back to Alabasta anyway because of whatever happened. Now, how does she get to Wano? I don't really know. There are some possibilities, like we know the Revolutionary Army has some sort of connection to Wano because they've been investigating the weapons that Doflamingo and Kaido have been manufacturing. There's also some special type of ore that I'm pretty sure comes from Wano, I can't really remember, but it has to do with the weapons that are being manufactured. Vivi might have escaped from the reverie with the revolutionaries and is possibly heading to Wano. I do find it a little weird though, because I don't think it's like the right time for Dragon to meet Luffy, and you'd think that they should be focusing everything they have on saving Sabo right now. So it's like, why would they come to Wano? But it could still happen. There's also another theory I heard around. It's kind of crazy, but it's interesting, so I'll mention it. Either Kuma teleported Sabo and Vivi to Wano, or Vivi gets Kuma's fruit and that's how she survives. A popular theory that you guys might have heard of from a while back is that all the Straw Hats with Devil Fruits have a numbering pattern from 1 to 10. The only numbers missing are 2 and 9, which would represent Kuma's fruit. I've seen some people say that Sabo was forced to kill Kuma, maybe Vivi took the fruit, that's how they teleported. And she's technically a Straw Hat, so the numbering convention does fit, but again, it's still probably a reach. How she gets to Wano, I don't really know exactly, but I don't really want to focus on that. I want to focus on like what it really means for the story. Does it make sense for her to be Joyboy? Or actually, let's look at it this way. If Luffy is not Joyboy, what does that mean? Well, I think this perfectly aligns with how the story has always been. If you look at most arcs in One Piece, Luffy is always the one who defeats the main villain, right? But the main conflict doesn't usually involve him to a certain degree. So let me explain. In Drum Island, Luffy defeats Wapol, but the main conflict is really between Drum Kingdom and Wapol. Luffy defeats Crocodile, but again, it's mainly about Alabasta, Vivi, the rebel army. In Skypiea, he defeats Enel, but it's all about Viper, the Shandians, Nolan, and Kalgoro. Luffy defeats Doflamingo. Again, it's all about Kiros, Rebecca, King Riku. And now with Wano, Luffy is going to be the one who defeats Kaido. But all the build up, all the main conflict, the tension, it's really between Oden and Kinemon and the Scabbards. Luffy often doesn't know the history of the places he's fighting for. He just does it to protect his friends. He's the guy who comes in and helps. Take that same idea, but put it in a greater scope. Luffy will still take down Imu and the world government and will save the world, but really it's about the different kingdoms and even Dragon versus the government. That's where the real conflict is. Now, I think Luffy will change in some way when he finds out about the Void Century, and his motivations to take down the government might be a little different. I don't think it's just going to be, I gotta protect Sabo, I gotta protect Vivi, and then he's going to pick a fight with the government. Although that could happen, it already did happen in Enies lobby with Robin. But I do think he's going to have a little extra motivation to take down the government. But the point is, when it's all said and done, he's not going to be the one who's trying to put in place a new government. That's for Vivi, aka Joyboy. Luffy's just the one who'll defeat the big bad, as always. If we look back at Alabasta when Vivi was introduced, this is the first arc in One Piece where the story actually starts to get political. It's the first time we're dealing with a large-scale kingdom. It focuses on poneglyphs, ancient weapons, and Vivi is at the center of all this. The seeds for the final arc in the story were planted back then. It's like a small version of what's to come later on. Vivi, the queen who rules the land, Luffy, the king who rules the seas. Or you could look at it as Vivi, the one who rules the land, Shirahoshi, the one who rules the seas, Joyboy, the mermaid princess, a bond spanning the course of centuries. I think it would be pretty amazing if Luffy had such a huge impact on the world, but he wasn't necessarily the one who was destined to change it. He just did everything of his own free will. Alright, that's all from me. That's why I think Vivi is Joyboy. I just don't think it can be Luffy or Momonosuke. Like I said, they're already in Wano. It just doesn't make sense given what Oden said. And it also feels like a natural progression for Vivi's character. Her eventually meeting up with Straw, her encountering the Revolutionary Army possibly. Vivi being the first character in the series to really introduce us to the politics of the world and everything to do with the promise that they were made. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and peace.